In today's story, we dive into a chilling case of betrayal, jealousy, and fatal violence in the small town of Rayford, North Carolina. Emily Grace Carter, just 18 years old and filled with dreams for her future, met a tragic and untimely death, unveiling the dark side of a community she once called home. Emily was known around Rayford for her kindness and bubbly personality. Having recently graduated from high school, she worked at the local Dollar Tree, saving every penny for her dream of moving to Raleigh to attend nursing school. Inspired by her single mother's battle with cancer, Emily hoped to enter the healthcare field and make a difference in the lives of others. Though young, she was mature beyond her years, taking on the role of caregiver for her younger siblings, Jenny and Noah. Emily was not just a sister to them. She was a friend, a mentor, and a steady source of love and support. In early June 2017, her life took a surprising turn when she met Sheriff Tom Mitchell, a prominent figure in Rayford. Sheriff Mitchell, known for his charisma, confidence, and dedication to the community, had many connections and a seemingly stable life. At 45, he was a respected law enforcement officer, but his magnetic personality masked a complicated private life. He was married and well-liked, but there were rumors in town of flirtations and affairs. To Emily, the sheriff represented excitement, attention, and the allure of something different from her ordinary life. Their paths first crossed at a community event. Emily, with her warm smile and friendly nature, caught the sheriff's eye. Their initial conversation felt innocuous enough, but Tom was drawn to her youthful spirit and innocence. Over the next few weeks, their conversations deepened, and what started as casual chats blossomed into a risky and secretive relationship. Tom's advances made Emily feel special in a way she had never felt before. She felt seen, noticed, and valued by a man much older and more experienced than she was. Though she understood the risks, the sheriff's attention made her feel desired, and the secrecy only added to the thrill. By July, Emily discovered she was pregnant. The revelation filled her with a mixture of excitement and fear. The idea of motherhood was daunting, but she also saw it as a way to build a family, to create stability, something she had longed for since losing her mother. However, she understood that Tom's reaction would be crucial. She confided in close friends about her situation and the hope that he might support her and their child. In the days leading up to her tragic end, Emily wrestled with how to tell Tom. She had decided that he needed to know, believing that this news might change the course of her life positively. Yet deep down, she also sensed the risks. She worried about his wife's reaction, the scandal that might arise in their tight-knit town, and the reality that their affair was never intended to be public. Emily was anxious and uncertain, her future hanging in the balance. On July 17, 2017, Emily's world came crashing down. That morning, her younger sister, 15-year-old Jenny Carter, awoke to find Emily's bed empty. This was unusual. Emily was rarely out all night. Concerned, Jenny ventured outside and decided to check the woods behind their house, a familiar place where they had played as children. On her way to the trees, she noticed broken branches and disturbed earth, a trail leading into a small clearing. What she found there would haunt her for the rest of her life. Jenny stumbled upon Emily's body lying among the underbrush, bruised, battered, and lifeless. Emily's clothing had been torn, and her skin bore the marks of a brutal beating. The horror of the sight left Jenny frozen in shock, unable to process what she was seeing. Eventually, she ran back to the house and called 911, her voice shaking as she relayed the grim discovery. First responders arrived shortly after 8 a.m., finding Jenny sitting on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, pale and visibly shaken. Neighbors gathered, drawn by the sirens and the sight of police cars, murmuring in disbelief. The scene they encountered in the woods was deeply disturbing. Emily's body lay in a small, isolated clearing, her skin bruised and her arms and legs scratched from what appeared to be a violent struggle. Blood smeared the nearby rocks and tree roots, revealing the brutality of her final moments. Investigators secured the area and began their meticulous work, combing through the scene for evidence. The lead investigator, Detective Laura Adams, was known for her calm and careful approach to sensitive cases, but even she was unsettled by what they found. Among the evidence was a discarded syringe and a burnt spoon, typically associated with drug use. Although Emily was not known to use drugs, the discovery raised questions about who might have been with her and what transpired in her last hours. The investigators were determined to find answers. As the medical examiner assessed the body, they made a shocking discovery. Emily was pregnant, likely only a few weeks along. This revelation added an unexpected layer to the case. When the paternity test later confirmed that Sheriff Tom Mitchell was the father, the investigation took a disturbing turn. The town buzzed with gossip and shock as news spread that Emily's child was the result of her relationship with the sheriff. Tom's wife, who had been oblivious to her husband's affair, was devastated by the revelation, but her reaction was more than just heartbreak. It was fury. Witnesses would later say she had been seen in a fit of rage shortly before Emily's death, her expression hinting at the wrath of a woman betrayed. Detective Adams, along with her younger partner, Officer Mark Jensen, carefully documented every clue. They took blood samples, bagged the drug paraphernalia, and interviewed witnesses, knowing that this case would require sensitivity given its impact on the community. Adams felt the weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders. The evidence painted a grim picture of jealousy, betrayal, and a young life cut short in the wake of another's fury. Emily's death shattered the quiet life of Rayford, leaving a void in her family and a permanent stain on the town's reputation. In the days following her murder, Emily's friends and family struggled to understand the events that led to her tragic fate, while townsfolk whispered about the high-profile affair that had remained hidden for so long. Her story served as a reminder of the devastating consequences of betrayal, anger, and unchecked violence that too often erupt in response. Emily Grace Carter, a bright, kind young woman with dreams of helping others, never got the chance to fulfill her potential. Her life ended in tragedy, but her memory lives on, a somber reminder of how a young girl's hope was stolen by a web of deceit and jealousy in a town that would never be the same. Under the pressure of the investigation and the watchful eye of the town, Sheriff Tom Mitchell was forced to disclose more details than he'd initially intended. As the questioning grew more intense, Mitchell's discomfort became more apparent, betraying a man who was suddenly struggling to maintain his carefully constructed public image. Known for his charm and approachable manner, he was often described by townsfolk as the kind of leader who listened with patience and showed up to help when needed. Yet, with every answer he gave, a darker picture of the man behind the badge started to emerge. According to Mitchell, his relationship with Emily began on an unassuming day in April. He had encountered her working her shift at the Dollar Tree and initially saw her as just another friendly face. As he recounted the early days of their interactions, he claimed it was her warmth and kindness that first caught his attention. Their exchanges began as polite small talk, evolving into longer conversations as he started stopping by the store more frequently, always lingering a little longer in the aisles she was working in. At first, he told investigators, his involvement was nothing but an innocent friendship. But then, as he confided to them, things escalated. They started spending time together outside of work hours, exchanging flirtatious texts, and even meeting up at local spots under the cover of the night. His initial hesitations seemed to give way to a sense of thrill, and soon their encounters became more intimate. Mitchell admitted that it was a rush he couldn't resist, something entirely different from the routine of his long-standing marriage. He spoke about feeling alive again in Emily's company, a feeling he had missed as the years went by. But as he spoke, his account shifted in tone. He seemed increasingly uneasy, hesitant to give too many details about their time together. When pressed, Mitchell admitted that his actions were more deliberate than he wanted to admit. He had, by his own words, taken advantage of her trust, using his position as an authority figure to win her over. Then came Emily's revelation. She was pregnant. Mitchell described the moment as jarring and unexpected, though investigators noted he didn't seem shocked. Nor did he deny the possibility. He admitted that while he hadn't wanted a child, he considered the possibility of providing her with financial support, hoping to keep the situation quiet. However, the evidence detectives were gathering began to suggest that his involvement ran deeper. As they scoured through his financial records, they found a hidden series of payments to various women over the years. These transactions were labeled under miscellaneous expenses in police budgets, cleverly concealed to avoid suspicion. Digging deeper, investigators discovered these payments were made to young women, many of whom were in vulnerable positions similar to Emily's, and whom Mitchell had reportedly seduced over the years. At least 5 women had received payouts, with amounts varying depending on the circumstances, often related to pregnancies that Mitchell had insisted they keep quiet. Mitchell's confession sent shockwaves through the investigation, creating a new theory among detectives. It wasn't just a lapse in judgment, it was a pattern, one where Mitchell abused his position, repeatedly leveraging his authority and his connections to manipulate and silence these women. His nonchalance toward the accusations and his evasiveness in discussing these details only fueled investigators' suspicions. They began to wonder if Emily's pregnancy had threatened to expose a deeply rooted cycle of exploitation that Mitchell had spent years covering up. Jenny's connection to the drugs took the investigation in an unsettling direction, raising critical questions about how her addiction might have intersected with Emily's murder. Investigators entertained multiple scenarios, each as grim as the next. One theory proposed that Jenny's drug use could have sparked a confrontation between the sisters. Perhaps Emily, in trying to intervene, had provoked a volatile situation that tragically spiraled out of control. This idea gained traction as detectives uncovered just how deeply Jenny's addiction had entrenched itself, a fact she had managed to hide from even her closest family members. Another possibility revolved around Jenny's debts to drug suppliers. Emily, though working only part-time at Dollar Tree, might have attempted to shoulder some of her sister's financial burdens, even if it strained her limited resources. Investigators speculated that this involvement could have placed Emily in harm's way, potentially leading to fatal consequences if she encountered dangerous individuals tied to Jenny's addiction. A darker hypothesis considered the likelihood that Emily's awareness of Jenny's illicit activities had made her a liability to others in Jenny's world. Her proximity to those circles, even indirectly, might have put her at risk. Further probing into Jenny's phone revealed an ominous web of messages. She had been in contact with a small network of local drug users and dealers, portraying a 15-year-old overwhelmed by her circumstances, spiraling deeper into risky behavior while desperately trying to conceal her addiction from her family. These revelations painted a harrowing picture of the hidden dynamics within the Cotter household, and raised the unsettling possibility that Jenny's struggles might have inadvertently set the stage for Emily's tragic end. The interview room grew tense as Jenny finally opened up to investigators, unraveling shocking details about her life and a connection to Sheriff Tom Mitchell. Tearfully, she confessed that her drug addiction began shortly after their mother's death from cancer, a coping mechanism for her grief and sense of abandonment. But the most startling revelation was that Sheriff Mitchell had exploited her vulnerability. Caught using drugs earlier that year, Jenny had been arrested by Mitchell, who manipulated the situation to coerce her into a secretive and abusive relationship. Emily's protective instincts had drawn her into the sheriff's orbit. Jenny recounted how Emily, horrified by her predicament, confronted Mitchell, ultimately offering herself as a sacrificial shield to spare her sister. Emily's decision to enter into a sexual relationship with the sheriff, while intended to protect Jenny, marks the beginning of her descent into a hidden, emotionally devastating existence. This testimony added layers of complexity to the case. Jenny's raw guilt and anguish highlighted the emotional toll her struggles had inflicted on her sister. Investigators left the interview with a clearer, yet more tragic understanding of the Carter sisters' lives. As they pieced together Emily's final days, the shadow of Sheriff Mitchell and his wife Karen loomed ever larger, signaling the beginning of a shocking unraveling of events. As detectives unraveled the events leading to Emily's death, one name consistently surfaced: Karen Mitchell, the sheriff's wife. The evidence painted a chilling picture of a tragedy driven by jealousy and fear. Karen had reportedly spiraled into obsession upon learning about Emily's pregnancy. For her, Emily wasn't just another fleeting affair of her husband. She was a young woman carrying his child, a direct threat to Karen's tightly controlled life. On the fateful night, Karen allegedly waited until Emily was home alone before confronting her. Investigators believe the encounter took place in a secluded patch of woods near Emily's house, away from prying eyes. Karen initially tried to keep her composure, demanding that Emily terminate the pregnancy and vanish. But Emily refused, standing her ground. As the argument escalated, Karen's desperation turned to rage. In a moment of uncontrolled fury, she grabbed a heavy wooden club she had brought along and attacked Emily continuously. The assault was relentless, fueled by Karen's pent-up anger and fear. Each blow unleashed the emotion she had long suppressed, leaving Emily battered and lifeless. When Karen finally realized what she had done, the weight of her actions set in. Panicked, she hid the club, cleaned herself up, and returned home, hoping her position as the sheriff's wife would shield her from suspicion. However, detectives uncovered crucial evidence. They identified faint traces of her fingerprints on the weapon and found fibers on Emily's body that matched Karen's clothing. On July 27, 2017, as the sun rose, police arrived at Karen Mitchell's home. Their knock on the door marked the beginning of justice for Emily, the young woman whose life was cut short by a desperate act of violence. At first, Karen answered the door with a calm demeanor, assuming the visit was just another routine check. But when the officers informed her of the murder charge, the change in her expression was immediate. Her face drained of color, and she instinctively denied any involvement, insisting that she had been home the entire night. However, as the pressure mounted, her composure began to crumble. Handcuffed and avoiding eye contact, Karen was escorted out, her gaze fixed downward as she tried to ignore the stares of neighbors who had gathered outside. For the Carter family, the news of Karen's arrest brought a mix of emotions. Relief, yes, but also deep sorrow. They would never get Emily back, but at least they now had some answers. Karen's actions had not only torn apart her own life and her marriage, but it also shocked the entire community. In May 2018, Karen's trial began. Drawing the attention of a packed courtroom and local media, eager to follow the dramatic proceedings. Her defense team, headed by attorney Wallace Case, put forth a defense that many found unexpected: the cheated wife defense. They argued that Karen's mental state had deteriorated after years of her husband's infidelity, particularly his affair with Emily. They claimed that the betrayal and the revelation of Emily's pregnancy pushed Karen to the brink, causing her to snap in a moment of uncontrollable anger. Her attorneys painted a portrait of a woman overwhelmed by emotional trauma, insisting that Karen never intended to kill Emily but was simply reacting in the heat of the moment. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Linda Chavez, forcefully refuted this narrative. Chavez presented evidence suggesting that Karen's actions were far from a spontaneous outburst. She highlighted how Karen had brought a wooden club with her to the confrontation, implying that she had planned the attack. Chavez argued that Karen's motive was not a temporary lapse in judgment, but rather a calculated decision to eliminate Emily as a threat to her marriage and social standing. Emily, Chavez emphasized, was an innocent victim, caught in the crossfire of Karen's need to preserve her reputation and protect herself from scandal. The emotional intensity of the trial only deepened as Emily's friends testified about the profound loss they experienced. They described the girl they knew, kind-hearted, gentle, and full of life, painting a stark contrast to the brutal way her life had been taken. Throughout the proceedings, Karen sat with a mixture of shame and defiance, occasionally shedding tears when her attorney spoke of her husband's betrayal. After 2 weeks of deliberation, the jury returned a guilty verdict for second-degree murder. As the sentence was handed down, Karen's expression hardened, and she kept her head lowered, accepting the cold finality of the judge's words. She was sentenced to 25 years in prison, without the possibility of parole. As the reality of her sentence sank in, Karen's composure faltered further. The weight of her future behind bars began to sink in, and though she did not cry, her body language betrayed the emotional toll the verdict took on her. For Emily's family, the sentence brought a bittersweet sense of justice. They had lost Emily, but now the woman responsible for her death would be held accountable. Karen's sentencing left the community divided. Some sympathized with her, believing that the years of betrayal and emotional turmoil she had suffered led to a tragic breaking point. Others felt the verdict was a necessary consequence of the senseless violence that had shattered so many lives. Meanwhile, Sheriff Tom Mitchell was facing his reckoning. In the wake of the trial, an investigation was launched into his misuse of public funds. It was revealed that he had been making secret payments to several women, including Emily, to cover up his extramarital affairs. By May 2018, just weeks after Karen's sentencing, Tom was arrested on charges of misappropriating funds and misconduct in office. He was found guilty and sentenced to 5 years in prison, a scandal that rocked the town of Winchester to its core. Once a well-respected figure, Tom's actions had destroyed the trust of the community that had once looked up to him. As for Jenny, the youngest of the Carter sisters, her life took a different turn. After the devastating loss of her sister and the subsequent revelations about her family's dark secrets, Jenny entered a rehabilitation program to address her struggles with substance abuse. Over time, with the support of counselors and a committed recovery community, Jenny worked hard to rebuild her life. By 2019, she had not only graduated from the program, but also earned a college degree in social work, determined to help others who faced the same challenges she once did. Her transformation became a source of hope as she used her personal experience to inspire and guide others through their struggles. In the end, the intertwining lives of Karen, Tom, and Emily leave behind a tragic legacy of heartache. Karen's life was now defined by the consequences of her violent actions, while Tom faced the fall from grace that left him disgraced and alone. Jenny, on the other hand, emerged as a survivor, finding a way to heal and help others find their path to recovery. Their stories served as a poignant reminder of the destructive effects of betrayal, manipulation, and violence, leaving behind a cautionary tale for the entire community.